Good morning. D's still asleep. What day is it? Hump day! Mike, 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 Mike. I never get tired of that. Good morning, everybody. It's Wednesday. I moved to my new building in less than a week. We are all in preparations. My office is in complete disarray, which gives us a chance to reorganize and start anew and rebirth and refresh and all of that stuff. So we've been talking about the seasons and how life, our economy, your personal economy, relationships sometimes, looking at the seasons is a good way, is a great metaphor to look at and think about, here's what I need to be doing in the current season and here's what's coming. Because preparation is really what can help us anticipate and be prepared for those things that are going to happen down the road. You never know exactly what's going to happen. I mean, nobody knew that a worldwide pandemic was coming, but you should have been able to see that winter was coming because it was pretty easy to see that we were in fall for the last couple of years. It was harvest, harvest, harvest all over the place with very little effort. So if you've studied this stuff, quite frankly, I think it was pretty easy to see that a winter was coming. You didn't know why, but it was. And here we are. So we've said in winter, what do? Winter you plan. Winter you prepare. Winter is when you take care of your equipment. Winter is when you take care of your goals. Winter is when you figure out exactly what it is you're going to do. What does the farmer do in winter? He prepares his equipment. He figures out how many acres he's going to plant of corn, how many acres he's going to plant of soybeans. He gathers up all the seeds. He gathers up all the fertilizer. So you set goals and you prepare and you work on yourself. That's what you do in winter. You get ready. Then comes spring. What do you do in spring? You plant those seeds. So you go do whatever it is you can. You buy the businesses. You work very hard on your business. You go do whatever it is that you can do to plant the seeds that you've decided you were going to do in winter. Are you going to harvest in spring? No. Is it going to be super hard work? Tremendously. Are you going to have to wait in order to get your harvest? Absolutely. You should know in spring it's unlikely that you're going to have any type of a harvest unless you're harvesting from something that you did in a spring in the past, which could absolutely happen. Every now and then, does a farmer have some corn sitting in a silo and suddenly corn prices go up to $8 a bushel and he's able to make a lot of money? Yes. So you might have something that you've saved from in the past that now is worth some money as springtime starts to come. Gold comes to mind that hit a 9-year high yesterday. So if you're sitting on gold, maybe now's the time. I don't think so, by the way. I think gold still's got more room to go, but you never know. It's hard to deal with. It's hard to predict those types of things, but that's the type of thing that might happen in spring, but spring is for sowing. It's not for reaping. What do we do in the summer? We do two things. We nurture and we protect. We nurture like feminine energy and we protect like masculine energy. So when you have a garden, can you sow the heck out of it and then just leave it alone? Absolutely not. You got to do all kinds of work to take care of it. You've got to water and water and water. You've got to weed like crazy. You got to do all kinds of stuff to take care of it. Then you got to make sure that animals don't eat it. Will animals come take your garden if you just ignore it? Absolutely. If you don't pay attention, somebody else is going to come take your garden. So in the summer, when you're waiting for those crops to grow, that you're still working on, all those great seeds that you've sown, you've got to nurture like a mother, and then you've got to protect like a father. Nurture like masculine energy. I apologize. Protect nurture like feminine energy. Protect like masculine energy. We got to do that with all of our businesses. We've got to do that with any investment that we have. Jim Cramer changed the way that we look at investments. It used to be buy and hold. I remember when I was a kid, people would all talk about that, buy and hold. And the idea starting from the 1950s with a stock was buy a quality stock. When it doubles in price over time, sell half and then never sell the other half. Well, one of the greatest companies in the history of this company was GE. What if you've been buy and hold in GE for the last 20 years? Well, you've lost a ton of money and it's done absolutely nothing. So Jim Cramer changed it from buy and hold to buy and do your homework. So that means that you've got to nurture and protect. Any investment that you have, you've got to nurture and protect, especially money. Money demands attention. Remember, where focus goes, energy flows. When you're working on your money, which should be part of what you're working on all the time, it needs your attention. You can't ignore it. And what do I mean by that? I mean that whatever the business is, you've got to be part of it and on top of it all of the time. Whatever the investment is, you've got to be part of it and on top of it all the time. That doesn't mean you obsess, but you can't just ignore it and let it go. Anything that you just ignore and let it go is just like a garden that you ignore and let it go. Well, now you've just left it to the weeds and left it to the animals. That's not the way that you do it. You have to nurture and protect. So that means that you have to pay attention. Even if you're a passive investor, you have to pay attention to that particular investment. And mostly paying attention means know your numbers in any business. Numbers, numbers, numbers. You always got to be able to keep score. So whatever it is that you're doing at any given time, you have to stay and pay attention to it. We know the analogy that I keep using with you guys because it's the one that makes the most sense for me is that merry-go-round. You got to constantly be paying attention to it. Can you do that from a vacation? Sure. Can you do that virtually for a period of time? Sure. And especially the more that you get it going, the easier it is to keep it going with less effort. But you can't ignore it. Yeah, one of my great mentors was a guy in my hometown named Don Morris. Don was a brilliant business guy. And he told me that every investment that he got in where he was in charge somehow of the investment, he made money. But every investment that he got in where he had nothing to do with it, where he just handed money to other people, he lost money. And he goes, now some of that was just bad luck, and it didn't stop him from trying, by the way, but he certainly learned the lesson in terms of the amount of money that he invested. And he said, you've got to be a participant in some fashion. And if all that is paying attention and knowing when it's time to say, this isn't working, and I'm going to take what's left of my money and then go somewhere else. I mean, if you're on the Titanic, stop rearranging the furniture. Sometimes it's time to grab and pull out. So no matter what it is that we're doing, in the summertime when we're watching that relationship, that business, our kid, whatever, when we're watching it grow, we need to nurture and we need to protect. We need to take care of it and we need to protect it from those that would come and take it, the animals and the weeds. Because gravity and weeds are automatic. You don't have to work in order for that to happen. You have to work to make sure that that doesn't happen. So what do you do in the fall? In the fall is when you get to bring in all your crops. In the fall is when you get to harvest. And you go out and harvest everything. Now, 2 lessons for us in the fall. The first lesson is harvest without regret. What do we mean by that? Sometimes you do everything right and it should have worked and it doesn't. It happens. That is life. I've told you my story, did everything right for 20 years, did absolutely nothing wrong, and everything that I had saved for 20 years, I saved 10% from $1, dollar cost averaged it, invested, did everything I was supposed to do, read all the books, did all the stuff, and in a matter of months, gone. Everything gone. And I was $800,000 in the hole. Did nothing wrong. It happens. So sometimes you can look and do everything right, and when you go to harvest, there's very little or there's nothing there. Don't have regrets. Learn. Learn from that situation and know that there's going to be times where that happens. There's going to be times where you played the game exactly as you should have, and it should have worked, and it doesn't. I mean, you might have invested in something that should have worked out fantastically this summer, and then a worldwide pandemic hit. Well, you know what? Hard to predict a worldwide pandemic, and it didn't work out. That doesn't mean that you don't do it again. That doesn't mean that you were stupid. That doesn't mean that you did something wrong. That doesn't mean that you're a bad person. That just means that you need to learn the lesson, and the lesson is always look at the worst possible result when you're getting into something. When you're getting into any type of investment, when you're getting into any type of business, you always stop and say, what's the worst possible result that can happen here? And can I accept that? We're really good at looking at the best possible result. What's the best possible outcome? We can all predict that. But we need to also be able to predict what's the worst possible outcome? What's the worst thing that can happen with all of this? And then we got to look at that and go, can I live with that if that happens? And if the answer is yes, then you go into the investment. You do everything right. You work your tail off. You do all this stuff. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. Do it without regret. Learn and move forward and know that there are times that that's going to happen. But then also do the opposite. There are times when your crop is going to be over bountiful. And in fact, the more that you do this, the more that you have the right attitude, the more that you change appreciation for expectation, the more that you give back, the more that you find balance, the more that you manage your state, your harvest will be over bountiful. Harvest that crop without guilt. This is a tough one for me. When you are the one that wins, do so without regret, but also do so without guilt. If you've done everything right, and if you've had it all work out, and all of a sudden you get the big bounty, don't feel badly about that. Don't go brag. Don't go be a jerk. Be generous. But don't feel guilty about the fact that you've had success. Remember, I talked about what happens when we do a poor job, when we do a good job, and when we do an excellent job, and that right above excellent is this little difference called outstanding. Maybe I'll do that one a little bit again tomorrow because that's a good one to remember. When you are the one that stands out, the rewards are disproportional. That's the way the world is set up. The people that stand out get an abundance of rewards. And by the way, many of them have a difficult time accepting it. I've been around celebrities. I've been around super successful business people. The super successful business people seem to accept it a little bit easier because it took longer. You know, and a lot of times it takes a tremendous amount of time for the celebrities. I mean, I told you the story of Morgan Freeman and of Samuel L. Jackson, who were in the film business for 20 years before their careers finally took off. But when the career does take off and suddenly you're making millions of dollars in a year, a lot of people have a difficult time dealing with that. You know, they look around and go, do I really deserve this? When you reap the harvest and it's overabundant, do not regret, do not feel badly about the fact that you did everything right and it worked out. Be generous. Give 10% away. Give 20% away. Help others out. Share your time. Teach people what you've learned. Do all those things to pay it forward. But don't think that you did something wrong simply because you worked harder than everybody else and you took the risk and it worked. So when it's time to harvest in the fall, we do it with two ways. We do it without regret, and we do it humbly. We do it without feeling badly about an overabundance. So if it doesn't work out, don't be upset with yourself. Learn the lesson, move forward, know that that's going to happen. If your crop is through the roof, you gather it in, you pat yourself on the back quietly in private, but you do not feel badly around other people. You don't brag, but you don't feel badly about other people about how to do that. Go share what you learned, and go help others out. As I said, we all should be able to give $1 million to charity. There's no reason living in this country that we shouldn't be able to do that. Our government decided to hit a couple of buttons on the computer and put $7 trillion more into the United States economy. You know how much money there is sloshing around in the economy right now? And it's all there, just digits, ready to go. So if all of a sudden you find a business that is paying you $1 million, don't feel badly about that. Somebody else should be able to get the money so then you can go help other people, so that you can donate your time, so that you can donate to your church, so that you can donate to the charity of your choice. If you feel that you have the ability to go do that stuff, then it's your obligation to go do it. And don't regret or don't feel badly when you go to harvest if you've worked your tail off and you've got big piles of reward. Just pay it forward and go use other people. I hope these metaphors make sense to you and help you out. I think that they're great. This was the backbone of Jim Rohn's speeches when he used to give them, and he did a beautiful job with them. He was really a student of the Bible, and he used that as his method of teaching in terms of where he came up with all of these ideas. I think they're super helpful. I hope they're helpful to you. Happy Hump Day, everybody. Mike. Have a great day. I will see you tomorrow. We're all in this together. Let's take care of each other.